Welcome to beautiful Laguna, Phuket. We're here for the Laguna Phuket Triathlon. Unbelievable today to be with one of my favorite guys on the planet, Mr. Peter Henning, Ironman Hall of Famer. Accompanying us leading into the show, we had Sao on the Kim, Hua on the Ching. Thank you both so much for being with us. They're going to be with us every day. Of course, just like Poncho Man and Hawaii, right?
I think it's a little different than Poncho
No,
Man.
it's sort of like Poncho Man, just a little different. Looks like Poncho Man in Hawaii. We're in Rainer with the accordion in Germany. So Peter is like we were in Germany, and now we're in Kona, and now we're here in Laguna, Phuket. Have you been here that many times?
I have been to Phuket once, and it was 1964.
Wow, before I was born. Wow, that's a long time ago.
Yeah,
gosh.
about that.
Yeah.
I mean, about the music, I mean, there's so calming. The music, the whole Thai culture is such a calming thing. It's fantastic.
I love that. So, Peter, what brings you here? You were just inducted into the Ironman Hall of Fame. Well deserved for all the Emmy-winning TV shows for NBC on the Ironman, and for your contribution to the sport and becoming the storyteller for the sport. Talk a little bit about what the meaning of that for you.
Oh, I have to tell you, I saw you in Kona, and we were talking about it. It was just prior to me getting in and before I was inducted. And now, I mean, the whole thing really didn't hit me.
Yeah.
Until, you start hearing your name mentioned with Mark Allen, Dave Scott, Paula Newby, stuff like that.
The real guys.
Yeah. I'm a guy, I did my first 5K a month ago. So that's it. But no, it's very impressive. And you think back, but you think back of all those great moments and the great stories I was able to, through the help of you guys with CAF and just the people, the athletes of Ironman and of the sport of triathlon that are such phenomenal stories from phenomenal people, that it was just a pleasure. And I just think I got an email from Terry Grigg just the other day, the lady with cancer that had to go back in and have another cancer operation. She was just on the Ellen show, and she sent me a split of that. But I keep hearing from these people, too, which is phenomenal. It really is what Challenge says. It's a family.
Right.
And, and the Challenge family really represent that. So.
Well, and I think if we look at our sport, triathlon is a very small sport. And when you tell those stories and tell them the way you did on NBC, someone like a John Blaze comes to life. I mean, this is, I don't know how many years after his passing, but people are still rolling across the finish line there, and that's because of that story. The elite athletes are great. They resonate. But the stories of overcoming, the stories of perseverance, to me, that's what makes triathlon, Ironman, and challenge events special.
It's, it's different television, too.
Yeah.
If you watch regular sports television, if you watch the Olympics, I mean, even though they'll have some stories, but they're usually about an elite athlete because you don't get there unless you're, unless you go to Special Olympics, then it's that's a tearjerker.
Right.
But you go to the Olympics, you don't see or hear from anybody who isn't, it's lower than third place. And sometimes you don't see third.
No.
And with the triathlons, with the Ironman, with Challenge, you get the opportunity of meeting these people who've come in, 14 hours, 15 hours, down finishing at midnight or whatever, and you find their stories have overcome all kinds of things, and they don't even have to be all physical. They can be, just overcoming poverty or overcoming some other thing in their life. They're fantastic. I mean, it's a great group of people.
Well, the interesting thing, obviously, about the Ironman races, when we're covering those in Kona, the culture, the island, the lava, all that enters into it. You're producing the show from this race.
Yes.
And you have the same type, not exactly the same type of elements, but you have elements here in terms of the island and the culture and the history. How do you incorporate that in?
Well, it's an hour show, which comes out to 48 minutes, so it's you have your work cut out for you.
Right.
You try and, like yesterday, we went in a boat. We took Rudy Wild and Belinda Granger and their partners and went out on an island to do an interview with them. But we got to see and we shoot beauty shots and bring out this is a gorgeous part of the world. I spent 7 years of my life in Southeast Asia back in the 60s and early 70s. And I just love this part of the world. So coming here is not like coming home, but coming back to one of my favorite places in the world to go to. So I want to, like the young lady here playing the
we've got the
Kim.
We got the Kim and the Ching.
But the music that comes out, last night I watched it, a young lady doing it in the hotel, and I said, God, that's what we need for possibly opening the show.
Of
we
course.
show beauty shots and that music and see that. It's a beautiful culture, beautiful people. It's a beautiful country.
And you've got, Pete Jacobs, Ironman champion racing. You've got Chris McCormick, two-time Ironman champion racing, and you've got a really Melissa Hulschult, who just won. She's like won here 2 years in a row.
Hopefully, she's been ill, and hopefully she is going to be able to start. She has something wrong physically with her. But if she's, that's a force to be reckoned with. So.
Absolutely. Take us back to, we chat a little bit in Kona, but for folks who haven't heard the story from you getting into this world, you were, 6 years old?
Yeah,
when Dad gave you a camera and said, start shooting?
That was it. My father was a cameraman. Well, actually, he started as a cameraman as I did, and he ended up being a cameraman, but also ran the Army photographic section, the U.S. Army in Europe.
Right.
And we were living in Austria at the time, and I was 6 years old. He came home from work, and he handed me a 16-millimeter Bell & Howell Filmo with a 10-millimeter lens on it, a roll of Plus-X film, and a light meter. And he says, Peter, your assignment for the weekend is go out and do me a story on traffic. And the operative word in that phrase or sentence is story.
Right.
You just don't go out and take pictures. And recording it on 100 feet of film, which is approximately 3 minutes.
Yeah.
And you have to tell a story in 3 minutes and edit it in the camera, because I didn't have the luxury of splicing equipment and things. So the first time was total disaster. I was shooting things and nothing went together. And then I'd give him the film on Sunday, and he'd come home on Wednesday after he got it out of the lab and critique it. And it was pretty miserable Wednesdays sometime, but that's where I learned. And all of a sudden, after that first time, you learn, well, you have to think about your story before you go out.
Right.
And you'd have a shot list and how you're going to put it together. Now, granted, he helped me with that a little bit. But you learn by doing, and that's how it worked.
And what was your big break in terms of the industry?
Oh, man. I had just come back from Southeast Asia, and it was in the 70s, and I was a cameraman at the time. And I walked into ABC Sports, and a lady by the name of Tony Brown was the one who hired crews.
Yeah.
And I walked in there and I said, hey, my name's Peter Henning. I've got a 16-millimeter Eclair. I'm looking for work. And she says, well, can you go to West Point this weekend? And I said, sure. She said, well, we need a cameraman. Go up to West Point for the Army-Navy game to show the guys at West Point getting ready and doing personal stories on them. So I went up to West Point I think we were there for 2.5 days. Gave it to ABC. They liked what they saw, and then I started working at ABC. I never was staff at ABC, but I worked there on a regular basis. And I went from Wide World of Sports to a show called The American Sportsman.
Yeah.
And I was director of photography on American Sportsman for 15 years.
And you got to meet legends, Ted Williams, all the big guys.
And, Joe Foss, the Congressional Medal of Honor winner, but also a governor of Montana.
Right.
And all these other people who, Jerry Lewis.
Yes.
Hank Williams Jr.
Oh, yeah.
There was a lot of people on that show.
And then how did the Ironman come into your life and triathlon?
I had, believe it or not, this is a strange segue, but I had been shooting and producing a sled dog race in Alaska called the Iditarod.
Infamous, yeah.
I had been doing that for ESPN, for ABC first, then CBS, then ESPN. And ABC at the time was doing the Ironman in the 80s.
Yeah.
And because of my schedule, I was never in position to go to Kona. I heard all my friends talk about Kona, but I could never, because there was, in the American Sportsman, I was usually in New Zealand or the Southern Hemisphere at that time of the year. So NBC got the show, and it was kind of like a perfect storm. In 2000, the Iditarod stopped television.
Yeah.
I was doing the Tour de France at that time.
Right.
ESPN lost the contract for the Tour de France. I was also directing the Eco Challenge.
Yes.
And the I'm getting ahead of myself. And the Eco Challenge kind of played out. So Ironman asked me if I would come and take over the TV. But prior to that, I started as a cameraman in 1992 at Ironman.
At Ironman.
That's where I got out of sequence there.
And what really, in terms of learning the event, you learned from Greg Welch.
Greggy Welch. I mean, when I first met Greg Welch, I didn't know who he was. He was just this
little mini guy.
elfin character that kind of talked funny. and he was injured at the time.
Right.
And he was sitting at the top of Palani. Lisa Lax, who was the NBC producer, one of the people who also set the stage for what I came on to do later.
Right.
We were sitting there talking, and all of a sudden, this wealth of knowledge started pouring out of this elf.
This elf.
So finally, I said, "Who are you?" And then I found out his record, and he raced and won here. He's been everywhere. He's
won world championships in 1990.
And not to mention one of the nicest guys ever walked the face of the earth. Yeah. And has become since a very, very good friend. So he gave me my introduction tutorial. Triathlon 101.
Nice, love that.
Yeah, I thank him for that.
Watching him win the next year must have been.
That was a special moment. Yeah. Luckily, being at the finish line to photograph him coming over the next year was that was really exciting.
Your first experience with Challenge, I think, was last year. Was it last year in Germany?
Last year at Roth.
At Roth. Mm-hmm. And what were your impressions?
Amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, it was. How can I explain it? Here we are in the middle of Bavaria in a rural area with cows roaming around and things happening, and 5,000 athletes come to a town that has one hotel.
With 14 rooms.
And the camaraderie of the athletes, of the people, the local people, the staff at Challenge. I mean, Felix and his guys are just unbelievable. I mean, when they say Challenge family, the emphasis is on family, really. It's the experience of going, and that's what impressed me, from the expo to the race to, I mean, just things like, they ran out of parking at the swim start, so all they did was call up a farmer, and he came down and mowed down another 2 acres of lawn, and they went in and parked their cars. I mean, try that in Kona or something, or any races anywhere else. It's a phenomenal outfit. I mean, I really enjoy the people.
Now, you've been involved in TV and producing for how many years now?
Let's see. I started in 1963, full time, being,
so 50 years. So 50 years. Is it? Does it ever get old?
Yeah. The BS gets old.
Right.
The corporate.
The
manhandling, if you did it for this year, you should be able to do it for less next year.
Yeah.
And that's what wears on you. All you want to do is deliver a good product, an excellent product.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry to say that you can go so far, but you need certain tools to make it the level that you have it at. And luckily at Ironman, we had that for a number of years. We always were given the tools.
I've always felt that show was basically the PR thrust for the sport of triathlon, because you put people that could be you, could be your next door neighbor, doing this event that people think they can't do. And I mean, how important do you think the television aspect and telling those stories is to not just the Ironman or Challenge Roth, but just for the sport of triathlon?
Well, I can sum it up in one thing. I think I said it in Kona. Like the proudest moment of my life was when somebody comes up and says, "Hey," you hear him talking, and you say, "Hey, how'd you get into triathlon?" "Oh, I saw it on the NBC show."
Right.
And that, I think, says it all.
Right.
And I mean, and that's something that Dr. Gills, Jim Gills, who owned Ironman, recognized that.
Right.
And he, out of his pocket, before he signed Timex, everything was coming out of Jim's pocket.
Right.
And but he realized unless people knew about the sport,
they would know about his event.
It's build it and they will come. Well, he made television, and then they came. So, and that's kind of the mindset that he had, and I think it worked.
How big is triathlon in this region of the world, and is it growing?
It's growing. From what I'm actually doing an interview with Jürgen Zach later today, but he has a camp that he's teaching the young Thai kids. He's got that. There's a young man here, Ray, we're going to do another story with. He's been to Kona. He qualified for Kona.
Wow.
Out of here. And the rest of Asia, the Philippines, has a major, start of triathlon.
Right.
And it's great to see.
So what will your involvement be with Challenge moving forward? Or is that still to be determined?
No. I think overall what my thing is to build television international globally.
Yeah.
For them is to get it together right now because they're all licensed events.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone has a different budget, different look,
Sure.
different everything else. I think the first thing we have to do is standardize the look.
Consistency.
So when you see a graphic, oh, that's a challenge race.
Yeah.
And it has to look a certain way, have a certain quality to it, good music, storytelling.
Right.
Instead of, some of the shows I've seen, and I'm not being negative on this, it's what people do. Oh, it's the pro race.
Right.
But really, what we're trying to do is, if we're trying to build an athlete base, we got to get the guys off the couches and say, hey, I can do that.
Right.
And that's what television does.
Well, and that's your expertise.
Yeah.
That's what you do.
And then at the same time, when you build that audience, you build a bed of people who watch television. Therefore, sponsors for pros know if I get my guy into that race and there's TV there,
yes, it'd be good for me.
It's good for me. So it works. It's not just the age groupers; it's the pros.
Right.
So as well.
You have to have it all.
Yeah.
You have to have it all.
The pros set the standard for the age groupers.
Right.
When you see these guys who have zero body fat and ladies, doing this stuff, and then you see, other people, regular Joe Blow, out there doing the same thing, the swim, the bike, and the run. Mm-hmm. And knowing the struggles they're going through to get there and what they have to do, they just can't train. I mean, they've got to, go to work,
right,
do things like that,
family,
raise kids.
Exactly.
I think it's a great start for that. And that's what we need to do is get more people to see it and get into it.
So for the Laguna Phuket Triathlon, where will that air?
It'll air in Asia. As far as I know of, right
Okay.
now, it's I'm going to air on Fox International.
Oh,
which
nice.
Used to be Fox Asia.
Right.
It used to be ESPN Star/Fox. It's had a whole bunch of names, and it's right now. And then if we get all our syndicated deals together, it'll probably fall into the overall syndication internationally.
Love
when
that.
comes together.
Peter, thanks so much, man.
Oh, great
It's
seeing you.
always, always catching up.
If we keep meeting like this, people are going to talk. Wherever we are.
Every time I'm with Peter, we're standing with microphones behind at a bar table.
Yeah,
with
musicians.
With
too.
musicians. We got musicians everywhere. Again, we're at the Laguna Phuket Triathlon. My guest has been Peter Henning, Ironman Hall of Famer, storyteller for the sport of triathlon, and a guy who is going to be guiding Challenge through the TV world, which is always talk about a jungle. That's the ultimate jungle.
Go and look up Hunter S. Thompson's quote on TV sometime, and you'll see what television really is.
We are on triathlete.com. Hold on, everyone. We'll be right back.